The steel tube shudders as depth charges explode somewhere above. In the dim red light of the control room, the crew holds their breath, listening to the groaning of the pressure hull. The captain checks his watch. 4 minutes since the last explosion. 5 minutes since they heard the destroyer's screws fading. 6 minutes since the last communication with another German U-boat. 7 minutes since they realized this dive might be their last. The smell of diesel and sweat hangs thick in the air, mixing with the metallic tang of fear. A young machinist mate, barely 20, clutches a pipe, his knuckles white. He thinks of the letter he wrote to his mother, the one he promised would be his last for this patrol. He wonders if she'll ever receive it, or if it will sink with him into the cold, dark abyss. This is how it ends for so many, not with a bang or a final transmission, but with the slow, crushing silence of the deep. People say U-boat crews simply vanished without a single survivor. The truth is more specific, and worse. By the end of this story, you'll understand the dark reason why so many German submariners never returned to port, never sent a final message, never left any trace but an oil slick on the surface. In 1939, the German Kriegsmarine faced an impossible problem. Britain's naval supremacy threatened to strangle Germany's war effort before it truly began. The Royal Navy controlled the seas, their destroyers and battleships forming an iron ring around the British Isles, a chain of steel the Germans called the blockade. German surface ships couldn't break this blockade. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but underwater. That was different. The ocean depths offered concealment that no surface fleet could match. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, a former U-boat commander himself, had a plan. He believed a fleet of modern submarines, operating in coordinated wolf packs, could sever Britain's lifeline across the Atlantic. In the vast empty expanse of the ocean, a submerged vessel was invisible, a ghost that could strike without warning and disappear just as quickly. The U-boat wasn't just a weapon, it was Germany's answer to being surrounded, outgunned and cut off from the world's resources. In the cold, grey waters of the North Atlantic, where winter gales could swallow ships whole and fog could hide a convoy until it was too late. These underwater hunters would become Germany's most terrifying weapon, or so they thought. Then the shooting started, and the paper logic died. On paper, the Type 7 U-boat was a masterpiece of engineering, a perfect predator for its environment. At just over 67 metres long, it was small enough to be difficult to find, but packed enough firepower to sink a battleship with its 5 torpedo tubes. Its diesel engines gave it impressive surface speed of around 17 knots, allowing it to race to intercept convoys or reposition for an attack. When it was time to hunt, it would switch to its electric motors, running silently underwater, a phantom beneath the waves. The design was so effective and versatile that Germany built over 700 of them during the war. Crews initially took immense pride in these iron coffins, a grim nickname they used with a sense of dark humour. They respected their engineering excellence and their living quarters, which were almost luxurious compared to the smaller, older coastal boats. Allied sailors certainly feared them. Early in the war, a single U-boat could slip inside a convoy's escort screen at night and sink multiple ships before the convoy even realized it was under attack. The German High Command, led by Dönitz, believed these underwater raiders would starve Britain into submission within months. They called it Die glückliche Zeit, the happy time, when U-boats roamed almost unchecked, sending thousands of tons of Allied shipping to the bottom every week. But the advantage came with a bill, and the payment was due in blood. The first dark reason was the pressure hull itself. U-boats were designed to dive to about 100 metres safely, with a theoretical crush depth around 200–250 metres. But the math changed violently when depth charges started exploding nearby. The shock waves dramatically increased the pressure on the hull, sometimes causing catastrophic failures at much shallower depths. You can feel it in your bones, the sudden lurch as the entire boat seems to compress, the deafening bang followed by a deeper, more terrifying groan of stressed steel, the spray of water from a leaking joint, the terrified glances between crewmen as they wonder if this is it. The mechanism was simple, but brutal physics. Water pressure increases by 1 atmosphere every 10 metres of depth. At 150 metres, the hull was withstanding 15 times the pressure at the surface. That's like having a car balanced on every single square inch of steel. The Type 7's hull was made of welded steel, but wartime production pressures sometimes led to imperfections in the welds or variations in the steel quality. When a depth charge exploded within 50 meters, the concussive force was like a giant fist hammering the hull. This could create microfractures that were invisible, but would grow with each subsequent dive or shock. The human experience was pure terror, knowing you were surrounded by tons of water that wanted nothing more than to crush you and your metal tube into a single compact mass. The consequence was horrifying. Many U-boats simply imploded without time to surface or send a distress call. They were here one moment and the next. They were just a sudden, violent collapse, a brief metallic shriek transmitted through the water, and then silence. And that was only the first problem. The second dark reason was the battery system, the very heart of the U-boat's submerged capability. U-boats relied on massive lead-acid batteries for underwater propulsion, but these batteries had a deadly, insidious flaw. When damaged or overcharged, they could release chlorine gas, a chemical weapon that killed silently from within. Imagine you're 50 meters down, running silent after a successful attack. The air suddenly smells like a swimming pool, a sharp, acrid scent of bleach. Your eyes start to water, your throat burns, you're coughing but can't stop. Someone yells, "Gas!" but it's already too late. The batteries are outgassing and there's nowhere to go. The mechanism was straightforward. The electrolyte in the batteries was essentially sulfuric acid. When the battery casings cracked, whether from depth charge shock or the violent pitching of the boat in rough seas, the acid would react with salt water, producing chlorine gas. In the confined, unventilated space of a submarine, even a small leak could quickly reach lethal concentrations. The human experience was suffocation in a metal tube where every breath burned your lungs and brought you closer to death. Crews learned to recognize the early signs, but by then it was often too late. The consequence was U-boats found drifting on the surface with no one alive aboard, the entire crew asphyxiated, or worse, submarines that simply vanished because the entire crew was incapacitated before they could surface or call for help. The boat silently sailing on into eternity, a ghost ship with a dead crew. The third dark reason was the diving planes and control systems. U-boats were incredibly sensitive to trim, their delicate balance in the water controlled by hydroplanes and ballast tanks. Too much weight forward or aft, and they could dive uncontrollably. The mechanism involved complex hydraulic systems that had to maintain perfect balance. When damaged by depth charges or simply malfunctioning due to battle stress or human error, these systems could fail catastrophically. Picture yourself in the control room when the depth gauge needle suddenly starts spinning clockwise like a propeller. The boat is in an uncontrolled dive. The angle indicator shows 30 degrees down, then 40, then 50. Alarms are screaming, men are sliding across the deck, equipment is breaking loose from its mountings. The pressure hull is groaning louder than you've ever heard, a sound of pure agony. The human experience was utter helplessness, knowing you were diving toward your death but unable to stop it. In many cases, the crew would be pinned to the floor by the extreme angle of the dive, unable to reach the controls to blow the ballast tanks and arrest their descent. The consequence was U-boats found at the bottom of the ocean, sometimes with damage that didn't seem severe enough to sink them, until you realized they had simply lost control and plunged into the abyss, their final moments a chaotic slide into darkness. The fourth dark reason was the enemy's relentless technological adaptation. Early in the war, U-boats could surface at night to recharge their batteries and refresh the air with relative safety. The darkness was their cloak. But then came radar. The mechanism was simple but devastating. Allied aircraft and ships started mounting microwave radar sets, like the Type 271, that could detect a periscope or even the conning tower of a surfaced U-boat from miles away, even in complete darkness or thick fog. Imagine you're the watch officer, ordering the boat to surface after a long, tense, silent hunt. The hatch opens, you climb into the conning tower, taking a deep breath of the fresh night air. But this time is different. You hear it before you see it. The high-pitched whine of aircraft engines growing louder fast. Before you can sound the diving alarm, before you can get back below, the lee light, a powerful searchlight, snaps on, blinding you, and the bombs are already falling. The human experience was sudden, shocking violence after hours or days of tense quiet. Many U-boats were caught on the surface and sunk before they could submerge. The consequence was that the safe time to surface became just as dangerous as the submerged hunt, eliminating the crew's only chance to refresh air and recharge batteries, effectively trapping them underwater. and that technological race led to the fifth dark reason, the snorkel trap. As Allied air power made surfacing suicidal, the Germans introduced the snorkel, a retractable mast that allowed a U-boat to run its diesel engines while submerged at periscope depth. On paper, it was a brilliant solution. In reality, it was a new kind of torture. The mechanism was flawed from the start. The air intake was just a few feet above the water. A single wave washing over it would slam a vent shut, causing a massive pressure drop that could instantly collapse the diesel engine's air intake, or worse, suck water directly into the engines. The noise it made was also a dead giveaway. The throbbing of the diesel engines transmitted through the mast into the water could be heard by Allied hydrophones from much farther away than the electric motors. Imagine you're the engineer, your head inches from the throbbing diesel, constantly watching the valve that might snap shut at any second. Every wave is a potential death sentence. The human experience was a new kind of anxiety, a constant nerve-wracking vigilance. The consequence was that many U-boats equipped with the snorkel were sunk because they were either detected by their noise or lost to a snorkel failure accident. A technical problem that sent them to the bottom without any enemy contact. The sixth dark reason was the logistical noose, the milch cow vulnerability. To operate far from base in the mid-Atlantic, U-boats needed resupply. Germany developed large Type versorgten milch cow submarines, which were essentially underwater tankers carrying fuel, torpedoes, and food. They were crucial for extending the patrols of the wolf packs, but they were also huge, slow, and completely unarmed. They were sitting ducks. The mechanism was a strategic weakness. The Allies, having broken the German naval codes, knew where these supply subs would be. Hunter-killer groups centered on new escort carriers could then hunt them down specifically. Imagine you're the crew of a Type 7, low on fuel and torpedoes, waiting for your rendezvous with the milch cow. You've been at sea for weeks, you're exhausted, but you're counting on that resupply to finish your patrol. But the rendezvous point is silent. The milch cow never arrives. You later learn it was sunk days ago. The human experience was a profound sense of abandonment and dread. The consequence was that sinking a single milch cow could cripple an entire wolf pack, forcing multiple U-boats to abort their missions and return to base, or worse, try to limp home on empty tanks, becoming easy targets. The seventh dark reason was the ultimate ghost in the machine, the Enigma code break. While not a direct physical cause of sinking, the Allied ability to read German naval communications was a strategic dark reason that poisoned every aspect of the U-boat war. The mechanism was intelligence. The codebreakers at Bletchley Park, with the help of captured codebooks and Enigma machines, could decrypt Dunitz's orders to his wolf packs in near real time. This meant that U-boat patrol lines were known, convoys could be rerouted around them, and hunter-killer groups could be dispatched directly to intercept them. For the German crews, it must have felt like they were cursed, like the enemy had a sixth sense. Imagine you're a captain. You've received orders to take up position on a grid square in the Atlantic. You get there, you wait for days, but you see nothing. The convoys seem to be magically avoiding you. You feel incompetent, your crew feels frustrated, but it's not incompetence. It's that the enemy knows your every move before you even make it. The human experience was paranoia and demoralization. The feeling of being a pawn in a game where the other player could see all your pieces. The consequence was that the U-boats were often sailing into ambushes they thought were opportunities, their element of surprise completely gone. The eighth and final dark reason was the ultimate trap of the deep. Once you were below a certain depth, escape was nearly impossible. Unlike surface ships where crewmen might survive a sinking and take to lifeboats, a U-boat that lost buoyancy control became a steel tomb from which there was no return. The mechanism was the unforgiving physics of water pressure. The water pressure at depth made opening hatches impossible without first equalizing the pressure, which would flood the entire boat and kill everyone instantly. While escape devices like the Tauschreiter existed, they were complex, unreliable, and almost never used successfully in a real sinking. Imagine you're trapped in a flooding compartment, the water rising to your waist, then your chest. You know the escape hatch is just feet away, but you also know that trying to open it would kill everyone instantly. The human experience was the ultimate claustrophobic nightmare. Drowning in a metal tube with no way out, the choice between a quick death by crushing or a slower one by drowning. The consequence was that when U-boats were lost at depth, There were literally no survivors to tell what happened. No lifeboats, no floating wreckage, no desperate radio calls, just silence and an oil slick on the surface. The dark reason U-boat crews disappeared without a single survivor wasn't one single factor, but a cascade of deadly circumstances, a perfect storm of engineering limits, environmental hazards, technological countermeasures, and psychological breakdown. It wasn't just enemy action. It was the combination of the hull that could crush, the batteries that could poison, the controls that could fail, the radar that could see in the dark, the snorkel that could choke, the supply lines that could be severed, and the code that could be read. When a U-boat went down in deep water, the physics of the deep ensured there would be no escape. The lasting impact was profound. After the war, submarine design changed dramatically, with far greater emphasis on escape systems, safer battery technology, and stronger single-hull designs. The German U-boat service had the highest casualty rate of any military branch in WWII. Over 30,000 of the 40,000 men who served in them never returned. War punished the assumption that underwater warfare could ever be controlled or made safe, and the men inside paid the price, disappearing into the depths without a trace, their stories lost to the silent crushing pressure of the Atlantic. That's the dark reason why U-boat crews vanished without a single survivor.